Now we're going to jump in with both feet and we're going to actually do something in Photopea. Again, when you come to the website, you notice it has new project, open from computer, and we can pick one of those two. So if I have something I want to work on, which we do today, I can click on open from computer and I can go through the file menus and find wherever I have it stored. For me though, if you notice, I have a file right here that I'm going to use and it's called Dino. So if you go to your folder and you find a file, you can just drag it, and notice when I put it over the desktop, it says copy, and I let go, and boom, it automatically puts it on the workspace for us. Get rid of this thing again. So what we're going to do today is color this dinosaur. And if you are ex-Photoshop user from my class and you're going, oh no, not the dinosaur again, we have to color the dinosaur again. It's a tradition, dadgummit. We're going to color the dinosaur. So I want to show you some tools and tips and tricks. One of the things I always tell people is that I don't necessarily at the first show you the best way to color or the best way to cut or move or whatever we're going to do. You can probably color this entire thing and have it shaded and have it looking beautiful in 15 minutes if you know all the shortcuts and all the tricks and the tips and stuff. If you don't, it's going to take you 2 days. And that's okay, because every time I give you a project, the purpose of that project is to practice using some tool. So we're going to practice using many tools today. Also, if we do a project, I said make a project. If we do a project like we're doing right now, please do the stuff I ask you to do. So if I tell you to press a certain button a certain way, or if I ask you to go to the menu and do it that way. This is just, we're trying to build muscle memory and we're trying to build skills. So I want you to be able to find stuff and do stuff. And if you are like, I know a little bit of this and I can do it quicker this way or easier that way, then you're not practicing the skill I'm asking you to practice. So the very first thing I need you to know and understand and do is shortcuts. In the previous video, we talked about the fact that if you put the mouse over a tool and you just let it set, it will tell you the shortcut for that tool. I'm going to paint today, so I'm going to paint with the paint brush. So B is the shortcut for the brush. So if I press B, usually have to be on the image. If I press B, it's going to switch to the brush. E is the eraser. So if I mess something up and want to clean it up, that's E for eraser. And I can use B and E and I can switch back and forth quickly. There's no problem with going over here and clicking on it on the menu. That's perfectly fine. I'm just telling you, it'll save you a little bit of time. One thing I would suggest to every person is we're going to learn a ton of shortcuts. So when we are doing Photopea, you need to have a mouse. Let's see if I can get in the camera. You need to have a mouse. You can use the trackpad kind of, sort of, but you are going to be terribly off. Get a mouse. And you need to have one hand, whatever your dominant hand is. So my right hand, most people are going to use your right hand anyways. Right hand's on the mouse and my left hand is on the keyboard because I am constantly using shortcuts and I'm touching buttons here and there and everywhere. And then so we're going to manipulate with the right hand and we're going to keyboard shortcut with the left. If you're left-handed weirdo, then you can switch, it's fine. What I would do is I would make you a page and I would, if you're at home, just get a piece of paper, sticky notes, whatever you want, and I would start writing down shortcuts. That way, when you're doing a project yourself and you're like, wait, how do I get the brush tool again? You can just look at the page. Some of the shortcuts we don't have, they're going to be shortcuts for things that are not necessarily these tools over here, so you're not just going to be able to put the mouse over it and find it. So make sure you're writing down shortcuts. And as you need to reference them, you can do it. When I'm at home and I'm learning new software, when I was learning Inkscape, when I was failing at learning Blender, whatever it is, I have a sheet and it has all the shortcuts and I just actually I tape it to my wall, which is probably not the best practice, but I just tape it to the wall right behind the computer so I have them. Please make you a cheat sheet where you have shortcuts on there. So we know B for the brush tool and V for the move tool. I have no idea why the move tool is V, by the way. All right, I'm now going to show you a couple more shortcuts, or I'm going to tell you anyways. These are the zooms. So what I do is left hand, I'm going to press and hold the control button. And I can't actually reach it with one hand, so I'm going to have to let go of the mouse. So if you notice my image, I'm holding the control button down with my left hand. With my right hand, I'm going to tap the plus sign, and it zooms in. Every time I hit plus, it zooms in, as long as I'm holding the control. I hold control again with my left hand, and I'm going to hit minus, 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 and it's zooming out. Plus and minus are in the top right of the keyboard next to the backspace. So control and tapping minus zooms out, control and tapping plus zooms in. Right next to the plus and minus is the 0. If I'm holding control and I hit 0, this is my fit to screen. So no matter how far I zoom in, if I hit 0 while holding control, it fits it on the screen. Doesn't matter how big the object is, this thing's tiny, but if you had a project that was 8 feet wide, if you hit control 0, it will fit it on the screen. There's one more I want to do, and that's control and 1. If you hold control down and you tap 1, that zooms to 100%, 100%. Now, where 100% is going to depend on how big a file is. Like I said, this thing's tiny, so 100% is not that big. If you had a little teeny tiny like postage stamp size thing, if you do 100%, it's there. If you've got a giant poster, it may zoom way into 100%. It just depends. You need these shortcuts. Control 0 fits it, plus zooms in, minus zooms out, and 1 does 100%. 0 fits to the screen. So you need these shortcuts. I'm probably not going to tell you these shortcuts constantly, but I am going to zoom in and out all the time. There's one more shortcut we're going to use today, at least that I can think of right now, and that is the space bar. So I'm going to put, let me press V and get my move tool, and you notice it's an arrow. If I click on this image and I move my mouse, it's dragging the image around on the canvas. I'm going to undo that. I don't want to do that. Let's say I zoomed in. I'm controlling plus, 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 and I want to move around. You can mouse wheel and it'll scroll up and down, but I don't really have a left and right, and I don't really use the mouse wheel because it's imprecise. So here's your next keyboard shortcut. I'm going to press the space bar. When I press the space bar, you notice that my arrow turned into a hand. I can now click and hold and drag around anywhere I want to. So if I want to look at the dinosaur face, I click and drag over here. So when we are coloring today, if I'm painting and I'm painting the face, and then I'm like, well, did I get that bird? I can hit spacebar, hold it down, and then click and drag over here, and I can look at the bird. Or if I'm just painting, I can paint my way down and around. And then I can use Control 0 to go back out and see what the whole thing looks like. It does not matter what tool you have. So I'm going to zoom in again. So let's say I have my paintbrush, and my paintbrush tool looks like this little circle. If I press the spacebar down, it turns into a hand. If I have my little rectangle selection tool, it looks like a crosshair, like a plus. If I hold down spacebar, it turns into a hand, and I can move my image around. These are shortcuts I use on every single thing I do. Control plus, minus, 0, and 1, and then spacebar. Okay, so next I want you to actually follow along with me. So you've got your dinosaur loaded. You dragged and dropped it, or you could have went to open on the menu and went and found it. We have a dinosaur. You're going to press Control 0 to make sure your dinosaur looks like mine. One of the most important tools in Photoshop, and I need to move myself, are the layers. I wonder if I can, I'm going to be in the way no matter what I do. Is that up here? Nope, forget it. So I have a rule for today. Every time you paint a different color, you have to have a new layer, and that paint has to be on a new layer, and it has to be named. So I'm looking at my dinosaur here, and I think I'm going to paint, I'm going to start with the grass. So I'm going to make a new layer. To make the new layer, I go down here to the new layer button, and I press make a new layer. I guess I should describe stuff. I'm going to put the hand over the word layer 1, and I'm going to double click really quick. Click. If you don't have it over the word, so if I double click on the thumbnail, I get up some kind of options here. If I click over there, I get some options. So it has to be on the word. So on layer 1, double click, and it's going to let you change the name. Grass. Call it green grass, whatever. I'm going to call it grass. Notice that it is selected. It has the dots, and it's got this little shadow on it. I'll move this back over here, kind of out of the way. Now I'm going to paint the grass. So I want to zoom into the grass so I can see it as best as I can. Get my mouse off of there. So I'm going to do Control plus. Oh, by the way, if I'm clicking on other stuff, so when I clicked on grass over here, I did Control plus, and it didn't zoom in. A lot of times you have to click on the work surface for the shortcuts to work. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to use the space bar. I'm holding it down, and I'm going to click around, and here is this little piece of grass. And I'm going to zoom in. If you start seeing the individual pixels, you're probably good. We can stop there. All right, I'm going to press B and get my paintbrush, and then I want to paint the grass. So the first thing we need to do here is pick the color. So I'm going to come over here to my colors. And by the way, this is foreground color on top and background color on the bottom. There's a D right here. D is default colors. I didn't mean to click that. So if you change a color and you want black or white, you can always just hit D and it defaults back to black and white. But I'm going to click this top one, and I'm going to pick a grass color. So I'm going to start by picking the greens over here. I'm just going to click, and it looks pretty grassy. So in my color picker, I can pick a color. If you want this exact same color I do, you can come to your color picker and type in the hex code 1C8D32. If I were you, I would just pick whatever color you want to, though. For right now, if you want the grass to be, bright purple, you go for it. Now, I'm going to tell you another shortcut that is very, very important. I'm going to paint this piece of grass, but you notice that my paintbrush right now is way too big. There's no way I could fit inside this without painting over the lines. So I have two options here. One of them is the one I usually don't use, but I'm going to show you, is you can right click with any tool and it will bring up more options for that tool. So I'm going to right click with the brush, and it has to be on the screen, on the work surface, and it brings up the brush options. So we have size. If I drag the slider, I can make the brush bigger, or I can drag the slider and make the brush smaller. And then we also have hardness. Hardness is how fuzzy the edges are. So if I have super hard 100%, then the edge is going to be a nice defined edge. If I put the hardness to 0, it's just going to kind of blur and fade out when you paint. For right now, I don't want it to blur and fade out. I want nice hard edges because I want to paint where I want to paint. So I'm going to press enter and click off of it. Sorry, Photoshop, you can click enter. Apparently in Photopea, you have to click off of it. Well, I messed up. My brush is still way too big. It's going to color over the lines. Also, you notice that it looks blurry, even though I said, well, the hardness is 100%. That's just because we're zoomed in super far. If I press Control 0, you can see it's a nice defined little dot down there. It's not a blurry dot. So I'm going to zoom back in again. Space bar around. Okay, so here is my shortcut. If I want to paint, and I have no idea why it has little double arrows in it now, and I want to adjust my brush size. Instead of using the right click, what I always do, notice how I can make it bigger or smaller, and I can do it on the fly, and that's using my left hand. Right hand is still on the mouse, is the bracket keys. So right below the plus and minus, there are bracket keys. The left bracket shrinks your brush. The right bracket makes your brush bigger. Notice that in my brush properties, as I'm doing this, right now this is a 5-pixel brush. And it says 5. I can shrink it down to 1 pixel and paint each individual pixel if I want to, and notice it says 1. Right now, I'm just going to shrink it down enough to paint what I need to paint without coloring over the lines. And then as I go, I'm going to make it bigger so I don't have to take, a decade and a half. And again, like I said at the very first, this is not the fastest way to do this by any means, but we're practicing. You're practicing using the zoom tools, the control, the plus, the minus, the 0, and the 1. We're practicing using the paintbrush and the mouse. We're practicing using our left hand to operate the bracket keys or the space bar to move around. We're practicing a lot of very, very basic skills right now. So I'm going to color this in, and I'm going to do the best job I can. I don't want to color outside the lines. If I color outside the lines, I can do Control Z, and that'll take it away. I could come up to my brush menu and go, no, I don't do that. Or I could get the eraser, and I would just press E to switch, and I could come back in and erase stuff. Just like the brush tool, I can use the bracket keys, left bracket, right bracket, to change the eraser size. Be back for brush, and I'm going to continue painting. I have no idea if you can actually see the red circle that's appearing. That red circle, if you do see it, is not part of Photopea. That's the screen recording software. So yours will not have that, I believe. Who knows? It's Photopea. Okay, so sorry you had to watch me paint. Okay, I have filled in this little piece of grass. Control 0. Yay, we have green grass. Now there is another piece of grass right over here, so I would zoom back in, Control plus, 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 space bar, click and drag, and then I would paint inside this piece of grass. Because we made a new layer, you notice that on this one, I can color over the lines, right? So I got my brush tool, and let me shrink it down. If I color over the lines, well, that's not good. I colored outside the lines. But I didn't destroy anything because I didn't actually draw on my dinosaur. I'm drawing on my grass layer. And see this little eyeball? I can actually turn this off. So I turn off the grass layer, and you can see that everything's still there. The only thing I'm making is a layer with this green on it. So if I need to come back and erase to clean this up and fix it, I can come back and erase and clean it up and fix it. If I were to paint on the background, then I'm done, because if I went in and did erase, it's going to erase the green layer and the background layer behind it, and then I don't have any grass to paint anymore. All right, so let's pretend for a second I have painted all of the grass. So I'm going to click New Layer, and make me a new layer. I'm going to go over to the screen, click on it, of course. Control 0 to zoom out. And I'm going to decide what I'm going to paint next. You know what? I'm going to paint the ground. So I'm going to double click on layer 1. I'm going to ground. And I'm going to paint on the ground. I'm going to zoom in. We'll start painting out around the grass here. We're just going to paint the dirt. I'm going to click my color. And I want to pick something kind of grassy, dirty, sandy maybe. It's kind of brownish yellow right there. Again, if you want the same color, there it is, 9 D1944E. But you can pick your own. All right, I'm going to paint the dirt. All right, so I got to get my brush tool, which is B. And why did you switch to pencil tool? Brush tool. There we go. I got my brush tool, and I'm going to paint. I'm coming here, and I'm going to be careful not to color over up stuff. I'm going to shrink down to get in the corners, and I'm just going to paint. Do. constantly resizing my brush to make it fit wherever. Now I did too much. Right there you can see I went over the black, so I can get my eraser. I come in here and clean that up. B to go back to my brush. Paint. So maybe I got too much right there. Get rid of that. Go back to B for brush, E for eraser. E for eraser. Fix that. B for brush. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to paint all of the dirt. But I want to show you something. Whoop. Now remember, I am on a different layer. Now I don't want you doing this because you're going to mess up things. But I just painted all over the green, but I didn't really because I'm on my ground layer, not on my grass layer. But notice that the ground is appearing, right? You see the brown ground. Well, if you notice in my panel over here, the layer order, ground is above grass. So remember, if this was like stacked canvases, there are sheets of glass we're painting on. If I'm painting on this glass layer right here that's the ground and it's above the grass layer I'm painting on, then I'm going to see this like looking down on it. You can change layer order. So I can click on the word ground and drag it, and you should see it gets a little, like the line gets a little fatter. And if I drop it, well, now I see green on top of the brown because it depends on where the layer order is. This causes a lot of problems because people will be painting and you come in here and you can say, you know what, I don't like the grass being that green. I want dead grass. I'm going to paint it brown. So I get my paintbrush and, oh, my paintbrush isn't working. Well, no, it's not that the paintbrush isn't working. It's that we're painting on the ground layer and that is below the green, so I'm only seeing the green. So if I paint over here and I turn off the grass, you can see I painted. It was just on the layer below it. Now, you don't want to do this because I also covered up the background. So, wonder if I can fix this with my history. So I'm going to go back. Oh, there we go. Control-0. And I'm going to go through and paint as much as I can. You're going to have multiple days to get this painted because it's going to take you a while. Like I said, all this really is practice using the tools, the paintbrush, the eraser, your shortcut keys, the space bar, the bracket keys to make things bigger and smaller, the zooming in and out. Okay, so let's say you've worked on this for 20, 30 minutes, however much time you're going to give it, and you're like, you know what, I'm done with this. I want to come back and work on it later. I want to work on it tomorrow. Then you need to save it. So we're going to go File, and notice it says Save as PSD. This is Photoshop document. This is a Photoshop file. Photoshop will open it, and Photopea will open it. And this is the only save option it gives you. There is one problem with Photoshop documents. Photoshop documents are not openable by anything else. In fact, Photopea is the first thing I've ever seen that will open them besides Photoshop. So if you save it as a PSD, you can open it back in here, which is great, but you can't like open it on your phone. You can't show it to somebody unless they do it in Photopea. The wonderful thing about the PSD is that it saves our layers. If you just open a picture you took on your phone, there are no layers. It's one document. So if you go into here and save it, you notice it has export as, we can do like a JPEG. JPEG is going to be a normal document that you can see anywhere. I would save it as a JPEG when it's the final thing and I'm done and I want to be able to publish it or I want to be able to send it to people or show it to people. But if you save it as a JPEG, when you come back tomorrow and later today or whatever, and you go to edit this, it will open, but there are no more layers. It's going to say background and all the colors are going to be glued together. And if you made a mistake or you need to change something, you can't do it. So it's very, very important that until you are 100% done with this, you save it as a PSD. It saved it as Dino, and it didn't tell me where it saved it. It just saved, probably to downloads. So you can right-click on it now that it's saved and go Show in Folder. Yep, it put it in downloads. There's Dino. You can rename it. You can move this wherever you want to and save it in a file folder, save it to your flash drive, whatever. Just save it to some place that you remember. All right, so I have Dino saved. So let's just go to DMAC. Go to DMAC, work on stuff. Later today, I want to work on it some more. So photopea.com. Okay, I can go to my downloads or wherever you have it saved, drag it, drop it. There it is. It has my layers, everything saved. I can pick right back up where I was. When I get done with this, go save as PSD, save it again. Please make sure you save before you close anything out. You go make sure it actually saved and it's there. One of the bad things we kept running into was people would click save and close Photoshop last year, and then they would come back the next day and go, hey, there's nothing here. Some of these files can get very large, and if they are very large, they take a long time to save. And if it doesn't save it, if it's in the middle of saving and you close it, it's just done and you lost it, and it's corrupted, so you can't even start over. So make sure it's saved. I think that's pretty much it. Have fun with this. This is not supposed to be torturous. Oh, I got to pay the thing. Have fun with it. If you are one of those people that has had Photoshop before and you know the shortcuts and things, then you can use the shortcuts. You can use whatever trickery you know. If you are new to Photoshop, and then please follow the instructions so you can practice using the keys and stuff and the shortcuts. If you are new to Photoshop and you know some tricks, don't use them. Please follow along and do as I ask you to do. That way we can get this down. This is learning our basics and we're learning our ABCs of Photoshop right now. So make sure we've got all our basics down. All right, guys, have fun with it. I hope you enjoy it. That's it for this one.